Well, Mr. Neely, welcome on to Real Wealth Podcast. This is Mike Proctor hosting Real Wealth Podcast, sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning. And here today we have Eric Neely. He is the Wealthy Trucker. He runs his own podcast. He is a trucker. He drives about 528 miles a day or so, which is a pretty decent commute when you think about it. More than many of us drive. I think maybe his interest in CDL world came into play when he had to get a 10-passenger van for his kids. We go to church together over at Pathway Goddard. We ran into each other working out and got to talking, and he has a lot of similar ideas that we have, and it just was a great discussion. So invited him on to our podcast to interview him a little bit more in depth on his views about money, lifestyle, business in addition to a daily job, trucking, and in some real estate. So he has a little real estate startup that he's working on and a way to diversify for himself and his family and provide. So it'll just be an interesting conversation today on learn a little bit more about the wealthy trucker and business and all the thinking he gets to do out there on the road.
Well, thank you, Mike. And you're definitely right about that. That's the windshield time that I get gives me all sorts of time to develop ideas and strengthen my faith. And it's great spending time reading audiobooks and listening to podcasts. And I've had the privilege to listen to every single podcast you've produced while I've been out on the road. So, and you're right, our ideas very much align. That it was intriguing to me to listen to your podcasts as I was putting together the concept for the Wealthy Trucker, because how you conduct your podcast is very much how I envision doing my own. And so you've been an influence on how the Wealthy Trucker has come to fruition, and it's been fascinating. So all I can say is God put you in my path, and there's no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah, awesome. And it's so funny that we hadn't come across each other until, I don't know, a couple months ago now, probably 2-3 months ago, because our paths cross in a lot of different ways. We just hadn't figured that out yet.
That's right. I mean, we've been going to church together for, I don't know how many, probably a few years, I would imagine, but there's so many people there. You know, we've probably seen each other, but never introduced one another. So
yeah.
It's fascinating how that worked.
Absolutely. And so you grew up in this area, right?
Yeah. I was born and raised in a little town just west of Wichita. And I've been...
Not Goddard, though.
Not Goddard, just a little further west than that, Garden Plains. So
okay.
Only 10 miles from Goddard. So.
Well, yeah, we have a walking path that connects us.
That's right.
Yeah.
My kids have ridden up and down that bicycle path many times. And interestingly enough, I proposed to my wife on that path way back in the day, over 20 years ago now, because this year will be our 20-year anniversary. So, has
it really been a trail that long?
No, it was a railroad track back then.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you got to the point.
Yeah.
My grandpa on my mom's side was he was appointed by the Supreme Court to appraise the Rails and Trails project.
Okay.
So he passed last January, but yeah, it was a Supreme Court case that determined the value, and he was the appraiser on it.
Well, very cool.
But when it went back to the local constituents and so anyways, so he appraised the part you were on.
Interesting facts.
Interesting, not very useful facts. But anyways, we can move on. So you proposed. You have not a half dozen, almost maybe.
Yeah,
you have 5 kids.
5 kids. Yep.
And you truck, and you've got 2 drivers now. 2 of your kids are drivers.
Young adult drivers.
Adult drivers.
A 17-year-old and a 16-year-old. Yep, I've got 2 of them that I have trained and let loose amongst the rest of the unfortunate drivers on the road. And then I'm in the process of teaching my 14-year-old. So she'll be going through driver's ed here soon. And so,
got your own convoy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that's fun. All right. So tell me a little bit about what actually led you into the trucking and now real estate world.
Sure. Well, what led me into trucking? Man, I can remember when I was probably 6, 7 years old playing with a little to scale truck and thinking back then how cool it would be to drive a semi. And then lo and behold, at 19 years old, that's what I pursued. So there's a lot in between there, but it's always been kind of a childhood dream. So, and it just ultimately worked out that that's what I got into. So yeah, I started driving when I was driving a semi when I was 19. And it was really to make money and support my young family, because I also got married when I was 19 and we were already trying to have children. So I knew that I had to get something established and going. And trucking was the route that I chose after a short stint in college proved that it wasn't going to be the way that I was going to go in life. Had to find something, and it seemed pretty dependable. So that's kind of the beginning of my working life, I guess you could say. And I jumped around to a couple different driving jobs and ultimately landed a job here locally in Wichita working for a dairy company. And I stayed there for probably 10 years and was a supervisor for a long time. So I got a lot of management experience, but still within the CDL world. And then after I left there, went to the company that I'm at now, and that's where I spend. I'm over the road again. I mean, I'm home every other day, so it's not like I'm going coast to coast by any means. But I just have an established route where I drive to Denver one day, and then I turn around and come home the next. And yeah, since I have gotten away from managing people day to day and, building routes and everything else that I did, now that I'm actually have windshield time, or what you might imagine a trucker being, that's where I spend so much time really just listening to podcasts and taking in audiobooks or just nothing and spending time in my own mind. And I find a lot of value in that. It's developed me into who I am today in a big way. I've been able to, greatly expand my knowledge in my Christian faith by spending time, reading books that other pastors or Christians have written, and I've found a tremendous amount of value in that. And then also within the real estate world, I mean, I got hooked on a podcast called Bigger Pockets, which I don't know if you're familiar with or not. It's a great introduction into the real estate world if you're interested in doing fix and flips and or wholesaling or whatever else it might be if you're wanting to get into real estate. And it was what lit the fire for me in diving deep into that rabbit hole of podcasts. So ultimately, I ended up going down the track of looking at multifamily, because as a trucker, I mean, I'm working anywhere from 60 to 70 hours a week pretty regularly. That's pretty much been my time frame for work for I don't even know how long. And if that's how many hours a guy's working, it's kind of hard to go out and flip a house. So, and I knew if I was going to transition into real estate, it was going to have to be more of a career change as opposed to just doing it on the side. So that's ultimately what got me more interested in doing multifamily investments, because they're much larger, and when you partner with other people and do it on a large scale, you can turn it into a career much quicker than you can doing it doing the onesies and twosies things. So
Gotcha.
ended up finding my partner that I partner with here in Wichita, and we made a plan, put it together, and started buying multifamily.
All right. So one of the big things we talked about on here is living the best life possible with the time we have left. And you've been trucking for about 20 years? Okay. So 20 years of trucking, it obviously has to carry, it's got to carry some meaning with you to stick with it for that long, right? So what's the best part about trucking for you?
Man, I kind of just like not having to work under the eyes of a supervisor or something every day. I mean, I've always been very much my own boss in a way, even though I've worked for other people. I mean, even as a supervisor, I didn't see my boss at all. I was kind of the go-to guy. You know, I was the manager. So though I had bosses, I was in control. And, you know, I never punched a clock. I was always salary. And now as an over-the-road driver, it's kind of the same way. I see my boss every now and then, but, you know, we hardly ever have much to do with each other because as long as I show up and get the job done, there's nothing much to be said. So, and then on a daily basis, at any given point during the day, I'm by myself. So those are some of the reasons why I really like it. Not having somebody telling you what to do every waking minute of the day while you're at work is nice.
Right.
Of course, it does demand a certain level of self accountability too. So, and that I've never struggled with. So, yeah, that's probably the primary reason I've stuck with it so long.
Is the autonomy and time you can just be by yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not to say I don't like people. I really do. I enjoy people a lot. But being in command of my own destiny, if you will, that's what I like about it.
Do you own your own truck, or do you run someone else, another company? Do you work for a company, or you run your own truck? Because I don't understand the over the road term.
Sure.
And I bet a lot of people probably don't.
Okay.
Kind of like in our industry, there's financial representative, investment advisor representative, financial planner. Like there's all these different titles, and people are like, oh, you either sell insurance or do investments is basically the thought. But what does an OTR trucker do? Or what does that mean?
Sure. I mean, over the road is I guess
you're always on the road.
Yeah, a good way to frame it is, hopefully, you know, as a city driver, you are doing local deliveries. You're constantly in
so that would be a city driver.
Yeah, city driver would be just local and home every day.
Okay.
Over the road just means you're going a long distance and probably spending at least one night or two or three not at home.
Okay.
So that's really what I mean by over the road. So I'm, like I say, I'll drive to Denver, stay in a hotel, and then I'll turn around and come back home the next day. So consider myself over the road by that definition. But I do work for a company. I've never been an owner operator. The thoughts crossed my mind many times, but, you know, there's a lot of benefits to being a company driver. If I blow a tire, company pays for it.
Because those tires aren't $100 a piece.
Yeah. Right. And getting them changed out on the middle of the highway is not a cheap endeavor. So
right.
It's a big stress reliever to not have the overhead. And also I get benefits and paid vacation. So, you know, and I've got a prime example. My uncle is an owner operator, and so I get to hear about all of the problems of ownership. And so
just for entertainment value, what's it cost to have a blowout tire changed on the side of the highway somewhere between Hays, Kansas and Denver, Colorado?
Well, honestly, I couldn't give you a price because I don't have to deal with it. Okay. I mean, if
you know the tire costs?
No. See, this is how nice it is. I don't have that I don't have that burden at all over my head. Because if I blow a tire, all I do is call my dispatch, say, hey, I blew a tire. I'm at such and such mile marker, and they send a mechanic out, take care of it. And that's the end of it. I don't even sign for a receipt. So they just send it straight to the company. Beyond that, I don't have to pay for fuel. And to get to Denver, if it's not a windy day and I don't have a big giant heavy load or anything, I will use about 70 gallons of fuel. If I got a headwind the whole way and a big heavy load, I'll use over 100 gallons of fuel. And so somebody could do the math there. If it's $4 a gallon, that's how much money you're spending on fuel. And all I do is pull up to the terminal at the fuel, or pull up to the fuel terminal at our destination and pump it. I'm not paying for fuel. So there's a lot of big benefits to being a company driver. And I don't know, if I ever do become an owner operator, it'll be because I've bought 5-6 trucks and hired a bunch of drivers, not because I'm going to go out and drive.
All right. So you got that going for you. And yet you're getting into real estate. Now, why would you want to go from truck driving, which you love, to real estate?
Really is a backup plan / retirement plan. That's been the primary reasons to get into it. Beyond that, real estate's very much a people-oriented business. And like I said before, I enjoy people. I really do. I like getting out and talking. I like touring properties. But I guess part of what brought it on was the fact that the transportation industry is going through constant changes. And with the idea of autonomous driving becoming a thing, it's been on my mind that, hey, there's a chance I might not be able to retire from this industry. And I don't want to get left high and dry if nothing but autonomous drivers are on the road and my job is replaced. So, and it's abusive to the body. And there's a big time commitment where I'm missing ball games. Like we said, I've got 5 kids, and when I'm on the road, I'm not able to be at ball games. And I've helped coach before, but I would like to do that more. But in order to have the ability to commit to that, I kind of need to get away from the trucking industry, because the trucking industry doesn't care what your schedule is. The customer needs product, you're on the road. So those have been some of the reasons. I mean,
is that part of why trucking is experiencing such constraints right now? Is maybe there's just better alternatives lifestyle-wise to go do something else other than trucking and still get paid well?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's always been a high demand for drivers. And I mean, if you look at our trailers, we've got it permanently painted on the trailer, now hiring. And if you start paying attention to trucks on the road, it's pretty common.
Yeah.
And it's because it's such high demand. I mean, the more and more people want stuff shipped to their house, which is more and more every day, the more demand there is going to be for drivers. So, it's just incredibly high demand, and I don't imagine it'll go away anytime soon. And the more they can automate it from a company standpoint, the better it's going to be for the company. I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where there aren't physical drivers on the road, but the first place it's going to happen, I would imagine, is going to be those direct routes on the open highway. So for me, 90% of my day, I'm spending it out on I-70, driving a straight line. Well, that would be a great place to automate a truck. And so I could see that potentially pushing me out of a job at some point in the future, or at least changing what the job looks like. So, it may not ever happen, but if I don't plan for it now and I get caught red-handed, then, I don't want to be up a creek without a paddle. So that's a big reason why I started looking at real estate. And then also, like I said, for the time with the family. I mean, I love driving. I always will. And even if I transition out of driving a truck entirely and just manage multifamily all the time, I'm still going to want to get out and travel, and just to have that time where I can educate myself on the highway, because I get so much value out of doing that. I don't want to give it up entirely.
Okay. So what about talk about along the lines of education? What have been important lessons that you've learned over your last 20 years of trucking?
Focusing on my faith and really allowing God to establish my plans has been the biggest thing that I have learned on the road. You know, I'm really active at church. I do high school ministry there, and having the teens hold me accountable to things has been a big value in my life. And I use my time on the road to deepen my knowledge in my faith. Should I use my time on the road to write sermons? So I've probably learned more about my faith on the road than probably anything else. And I've learned a lot about real estate out there, a lot. But my faith, I've probably grown more in my faith than anything by being on the road. So, you know, I use my time on the road, like I said, to educate myself, and I hold a lot of value to that. And that's why I would feel a little bit lost if I lost trucking or just time on the road entirely. So yeah, that if that gives you a little bit of a view of my thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, there can't be that many jobs you can do your work and more or less focus on something else entirely. I mean, when I go cut the lawn or work out, I'm usually listening to a podcast or a book or taking in some form of education, which is nice to be able to do that somewhat mindless work. You got to pay some attention so you don't run your own foot over, I guess, when you're mowing. But yeah, no, that's really awesome that you can take that in and learn as much as you do. So when it comes to how your job and your family and daily life intersects, maybe what's been a difficult something difficult that you've worked through and you've grown from it and you've learned from it that you wouldn't mind talking about?
Difficult I've worked through within.
Yeah, just life. And, I find that we learn the best when it's something difficult that we've learned from,
Yeah.
that we've grown through it.
With our first multifamily project that we bought here in Wichita, I learned a ton going through that, and it has helped develop how I manage things. When I'm doing it remotely like I am on the road, you kind of have to figure out some systems and stuff. And so when we bought that place, just figuring out the purchase process, who to deal with, and all the phone calls that you make doing it, and then daily management. Just having done that project has taught me a lot on how to manage them going forward. And so as we worked on others since then, it really helped a lot having that experience. And there's been battles and stuff. One of the biggest struggles we dealt with there was a big insurance claim, and figuring out how to manage an insurance company. Of course, I couldn't do all that on the road. I spent a lot of time in front of the computer, but I can do that at the hotel with no interruption. But yeah, that comes to mind as one of the biggest challenges we had, is really just buying our first one. So, and I don't know, I'm sure there's plenty of other challenging things I've been through in life. I mean, my management time at the dairy company here, that was fraught full of challenges that developed me as a manager. And that carries over into everything I do today within managing real estate, managing people. So, I can look back and see how all these different things have helped develop me into who I am today and how I handle things. So, and then, we talked about faith. I've been through all sorts of challenging times in faith, whether it's when I lost my dad to cancer or...
When was that?
when I was 19 years old. So
Wow.
it's been 20 years now, about the same amount of time as I've been in trucking. Because right when that happened was when I was getting into full-time career. So, that was a challenge to my faith, I guess, at that time. I mean, I never walked away from faith by any means. It probably helped strengthen it, if any, it did. It strengthened it more than anything, but definitely one of the roller coaster peaks or valleys. So, yeah, those are some of the things.
Wow. So you had a lot of life stressors right there when you were 19.
Yeah,
Married,
a lot.
baby, dad passing.
Yeah, we just got
new
married.
Trucking job.
Yeah, just got married, and dad passed away, and I think, yeah, I had just quit my job and was doing the training to get my CDL. So, and I was going to join the military at that point in time, but that didn't come to fruition because when my wife and I went on our honeymoon, I fell when I was snowboarding and ended up tearing my rotator cuff, and it ruled me out of joining the Marines. So that was probably more of a blessing than anything. But yeah, so a lot was happening in my mind at 19 years old. I would hate to go back to that day. And maybe this is why I have such a passion to work with the teens at church, because I know how big of a struggle life is at that age, and the junk that somebody might be dealing with, because I went through a lot. I mean, I had a great family and a lot of support, and I had by no means was any, they're just far worse off people than I was, but I was dealing with a lot back then, and so I can relate sometimes with the teens that I help guide at church today.
Okay. So your dad passed. Who was the mentor in your life that filled those shoes when you were 19?
That filled those shoes? I don't know. I kind of pushed everybody away. I mean, I moved out as soon as it happened. I mean, I was already basically out on my own at 18, and then when Dad got real bad, I basically came back home. And then as soon as he passed, I was gone again. So, I don't know that I purposefully did it, but I pretty much pushed my family away. I was 19 and developing my own life, and I was getting married, and we were trying to start a family already. So, and I was looking at getting into a career. So I don't know. I can't look back and think that I had anybody really guiding me. I'm sure plenty of people did, but I was very focused on doing it myself.
Mm-hmm. And how is that compared to how you do things today?
God is my number one guide. That's a simple way to put it.
Was he back when you're 19?
No. I've been a Christian since I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
Okay.
But at 19, I was dead set on doing it myself. I didn't let God guide me at all. Matter of fact, I just wrote a sermon and preached it 2 Sundays ago to the teens, and talked about how I was pretty much ignoring God. I would pray to talk to my dad. That was it. And so Dad was kind of still mentally for me my guide. And he was my guide growing up. I leaned on him for everything. I love my mom, but it was very much my dad that I connected with for, I don't know, regular guidance like that. I mean, my mom had a big influence as well, but when I lost my dad, that was, I feel like I lost a lot. And so then I just latched on to developing a career and being focused on my wife. And that was it. I was very narrow minded and selfish and focused on that stuff. So doesn't sound great, but that's where I was.
Well, what did it take to break that down? Because I think there's plenty of us walking around that are still maintaining control of, I'm going to do it my way, I'm going to do it myself. But how did your inflexibility get broken down so that your dependency, your humility could kind of kick in and allow a different attitude in your vocation, in your being a father, a husband, all that to kind of mature and grow up after it was dismantled?
Yeah. Well, I can look back over my life and see how I've developed where I am today, and I could say it's been a long journey. We had our first kid when I was 21, and I started, I can see growing up a lot there as I started to add more and more dependence to me. And then our goal, my wife and I, our goal has always been to have her stay at home full time with the kids and me work full time and support everybody. And that's the way we've wanted it. We didn't want her working and just hiring somebody else to raise the kids. We were very adamant that she was going to be at home. And so that financially was really hard. I mean, for a very long time. And so it forced me to grow up quick. I mean, at 21 years old, I was supporting my wife and our daughter at that time, and my wife had just quit her job. And then we had 4 others pretty quick thereafter. I mean, they're all within 2 years of each other. Consecutively. So I don't know. And then after driving for a couple of years is when I started working for the dairy company here, and I got into management real quick. And so I would have been, only 21, 22, somewhere in there when I got that job. And I was supervising guys in their 60s. So I had to develop a lot of trust there to be their boss. And I guess I remember developing the philosophy back then that I'm never going to ask them to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And in the dairy industry, when we're delivering finished product, it's a lot of hard work. I mean, a milkman's job is not an easy job, and you're working. Most of our runs started at midnight because you're stocking shelves when people are in bed, and there's nothing lightweight about that product. And so a lot of guys are getting hurt, abusing their bodies. I did too, and working those hard hours. I mean, it was demanding, and that developed me in a big way. Just being dependable. I was on call 24/7, and as a supervisor, I was on call to my individual drivers all the time. So if they had a question or something or a problem, they were calling me to figure out how to get through it. So that was, that phase in my life was a big developer in who I am today. And then, when I transitioned over into driving over the road, I was able to start taking time to reflect and develop my mind better, I guess would be a good way to put it. I even did a brief stint. I went back to college while I was on the road to study psychology because I very much wanted to improve my own mindset. And I thought that psychology might be a good route to go. I thought I might take that full time and become a psychologist at some point. I don't think it'll ever happen because me and college just don't agree. But I enjoyed my time learning what I did about psychology, and ultimately when I'm talking with the teenagers at church, I see myself in a way as a counselor, and long term, I could see maybe trying to go down the route of becoming a licensed counselor in that regard. So,
well, there's a ton of demand for it today.
yeah.
But yeah, so trucking's in high demand. That's in high demand. There's kind of a general shortage, but especially in those two areas, and medical overall have been really difficult over the last couple of years. So I would imagine you have job security if you want it for about as long as you want it, because even development of electric vehicles, I mean, you got GM just recalled like however many thousands of, is it Chevy Bolts or whatever for their batteries?
Oh, did they? I don't know. I
mean, they're still figuring out battery stuff. It's probably still a long ways off before mainstream autonomous electric semis truly take over.
I'm sure it is, but the way this technology grows exponentially. I keep track of Tesla quite a bit. I've invested in Tesla. I find their stuff really pretty cool and fascinating. So I've ridden in a few Teslas and thought, man, I like going fast, and this is a good way to do it. So when Tesla started talking about building a semi, and I saw some of the statistics on what those semis can do, holy cow, I'd love to get behind the wheel of one of them.
Yeah. I've seen the YouTube videos of these guys smoking their tires in them.
Yeah. I look at the abilities that they have to pull loads through the mountains, because, if you've ever driven through the mountains,
elevation is an issue.
Yeah. Anywhere around a semi, that those guys are slowing down to 40 miles an hour, and it's not because they want to, it's because they can't go up the hill any faster. And I've been in those,
crazy torque figures.
Yeah. And these Tesla semis that don't slow down at all and just fly over the mountain, like, my gosh, that would be nice. So,
well, and they look better than Cybertrucks.
Yeah.
Because I've got a Cybertruck on reservation, and everybody that they're like, that thing's ugly as sin.
It is. It is. I've got it on my wall at home in my office. I've got a picture of the concept Tesla truck before they came out with the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
And it looks very much more traditional as a truck. And as I remember, the reason it's on my walls because it was one of my goals is to buy a Tesla truck one day. Then they came out with the Cybertruck. I'm like, I might have to pass on that goal. That thing's gross.
So the most common comment I get about it is, when you get it, can I ride in it? I said, you don't want one? They're like, no, that thing looks terrible. But I want to ride in it. That's the thing. You got this super fast truck that's bulletproof, that, has as much clearance as a Humvee.
Yep.
Which I think is just amazing.
Oh, I do too.
Plus, you can't even really scratch it.
No.
I mean, it's stainless, doesn't have paint.
Right.
So all these amazing utilitarian aspects, and everyone's like, that thing looks terrible.
It does, but maybe it looks better in person. I don't know.
I bet it'll look better in person.
Yeah.
You'll be able to be a better judge in person, I think.
Yeah. And it's like anything. People are going to get used to it. So
yeah, that's right. They'll have to get used to it.
That's right.
Yeah. But just amazing what you can do. When I was a kid, I messed with RC cars, and it's fun to have the nitro powered ones, because they run 39,000 RPMs or whatever they run for these little bitty 2-cycle engines that put out just proportionally all kinds of power. And but then you get an electric one, and it's like zing, and the thing's just gone, or flying through the air, and you're like, this is amazing. Why don't we do that with real vehicles? And then it was 20 years later or something, they started actually coming out with them. And they're like, look at these stats. And it's like, well, in the hobby world, everybody knew this already.
Mm-hmm.
So, what gives is kind of the question, but they're figuring it out.
Oh, yeah.
They're getting there.
They're figuring it out, and it's coming quick. So it's an interesting time. But, I'm big into motorcycles, and I drove here today on a motorcycle. And one of the first upgrades I did was the exhaust so that it would be even louder. So the thought of having an electric motorcycle that makes no noise does not sound that appealing to me.
See, when Harley said, oh, we're going to come out with an electric motorcycle for the young hip crowd, it's like, I don't think this demographic exists. I appreciate the thought, but I just don't think it exists. anyways, so I hope they sell a bunch of them. But I'm with you. It's like if you're going to ride a chopper or whatever, you want the brap, the,
That's
you know what I
right.
mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the first thing I do every time I've gotten a bike is how can I make this thing louder? I want to set off
Exactly.
car alarms when I drive through parking garages and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's non-discriminatory. I mean, even as a kid, I had this little motorized scooter, and I made that thing so loud. It was fast, but I made it so loud. You could hear it clear across Goddard. Goddard's not huge, but still. But that's the thing is like, why do it's supposed to be raw and visceral.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
No, I'm a firm believer that a loud motorcycle is a safe motorcycle because people can hear you coming.
That's right.
But when it comes to cars, I mean, those Tesla Model S's that can do 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds, I don't care how much it makes a noise. I want that raw power. That's pretty cool stuff to me. So I love going to the drag strips and getting the nitrous oxide blasting in my eyes and making you cry, and you feel like you're beating your chest when it's rumbling down the strip. So I'm all about loud noises and fast cars and stuff. But at the same time, the technology of the electric vehicles that are producing that, it's pretty cool to me too. So
what if they can just pipe in, good exhaust noise into the cabin for you?
there's actually,
Does that work for you?
I've heard of people talking about putting speakers on their car to make it sound, putting speakers on their electric car to make it sound like an exhaust.
Well, Musk did that.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you can actually hear the car coming. So if you're a pedestrian, it makes it safer.
Oh.
Because they're so quiet, you can't even really hear it coming.
Yep. No, I've experienced that. I've been by them as they showed up. I'm like, wow, where'd that come from?
So you got a 2-wheeler and an 18-wheeler. And you do have a 4-wheeler.
Multiple 4-wheelers, yes. And we've got a big 10-passenger van that we bought for the whole family. We now have, like I said, 2 drivers on the road, and I've got a vehicle for each one of them. Plus, I've got my own vehicle that I drive back and forth to work, and the motorcycle. And I'm building a motorcycle with my oldest daughter right now.
Wow.
I've got all sorts of vehicles. Probably too many.
Okay.
I need to get rid of some kids so I can get rid of some cars.
So what's the most important thing to you about living the best life possible for where you're at right now? You got your family, you got truck driving, you got real estate. What does that look like for you, Eric?
Living the best life possible. It's remaining very focused on my faith, making sure that God is guiding every decision I make and everything that I do, whether it's real estate or trucking or parenting. I want to make sure the decisions I'm making on a daily basis are what God has in mind for me in my life. So that's number one. That's my guide in everything I do. And every decision I make, that's what I try to, the standard I try to hold to. I fail at it all the time, but that's what I try to hold to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. What are you excited about over the next few years?
Oh, within the world of producing income, I'm excited about, buying more multifamily projects, whether it's locally or if we start transitioning outside of Wichita. I look forward to that. I do look forward to getting out of a truck at some point because it is abusive to my body. I go to the gym as often as I can to try and stay in shape. I watch what I eat out on the road because, if you don't see me now, I'm not the traditional overweight trucker, and I've been doing it for 20 years. So being always focused on my fitness is a big deal. So just trying to remain healthy and focused on my faith and growing the real estate business. Those are some of the key areas that I'm trying to remain focused on, and I could see all of that growing quite a bit in the next few years. So, if it goes faster, great. Maybe I can transition out of driving and be able to focus on my kids even more on a much more purposeful and regular basis. So that would be nice, but I'm not going to push God's plans faster than they're going to develop anyway. So,
All right. And I just want to be real clear. Like, this isn't any sort of solicitation, but you do have a real estate business that you do have partners in. And what's it called again?
Febros Capital.
Febros Capital. Okay. And if you did have maybe a developer who wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Probably the easiest way is go to my website, which is febroscapital.com. It's FEBROS, and then the word capital.com. And I've got my contact info on there. And just it kind of breaks down what we do. So, the only thing that we're really focused on is multifamily investments. So that's just large apartment complexes, generally speaking, 50 units and bigger. But that's the easiest way, febroscapital.com.
All right, very cool. Well, congratulations on launching your Febros Capital real estate business and doing that in the midst of trucking, a very needed, very appreciated industry these days, as we more and more just want to get stuff showing up at our house. Don't even have to go out in the world to get it. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit of insight into your world, into your thoughts, your family, and how you've grown and how you're giving back to other youth that can definitely use the mentors in the world. And I'm glad you're investing back.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk to you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I look forward to more conversations.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric. And that'll wrap it up today. Again, this is Michael Proctor here with Real Wealth Podcast, sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning, where we help people make wise financial decisions. And Real Wealth Podcast here to help offer insight on how to live the best life possible with the time you have left.